got bored, so we started a podcast about the best bar band in the land, man. This is the Hood Rat Recap, and we are back. We are the steadiest stream of the unified scenes, all the news and reviews of the band you love, we love, called The Hold Steady. Hello, everybody. This is Upright Mike on the mic. Changing my name. That's right. I'm changing my name for this one episode. And as always, I am joined by the unified scene's own King of Queens, Gasper. Gasper, how you doing today? Do you want to change your name today?
Yeah, man. I've been trying to get people to call me Chuck Norris. You want to know why?
Why is that, Gasper?
Because I got that 1-2 punch. But it hasn't been going so good. People have been calling me Hong Kong Phooey. So I think I'll just stick with Gasper King of Queens.
I think I'd rather you be missing in action.
Oh, and speaking of new names, who we just heard the voice of...
He's the voice of our producer and our third mic. It's Kevin is Whenever. How you doing, Kev?
I am good. What's up, everybody? Glad to be back and look forward to talking a little lifter puller today.
All right.
So Mike, why don't you tell us the story of Upright Mike?
Well, I got two reasons for it. You know, I take my name Stage Right Mike because I'm trying to sound like Club Dwight, which we're going to be talking some lifter puller today. But because I usually guard the right side of my stage at my job when we have concerts, and I did 3D concerts in a row. We did Duran, which it's a casino, so we get the oldies, okay, folks. We did Duran, which got rained out and kind of turned into Woodstock '99, where people were barricading themselves in the porta potties. But that's another. I'll tell that story some other day. And then I did the Doobie Brothers, so that was the second D in a row, and now we're waiting on Three Doors Down. So we got all the. Wow. Well, I guess they're not really D. Yeah, it's a lot of D's. So that's why I call myself Stage Right Mike, because I usually guard the right side, back side of the stage. But now today I've been Upright Mike because at my second job, I guard the upright at the U.S. Bank Stadium for the Vikings. I guard the goalposts because they don't guard themselves. Am I right, Kevin is Whenever? Do they guard themselves?
No one guards any goalposts in anything that I've been. But I will say, funny enough, I did just see Duran a month ago, and they were great. I'm sorry you got rained out. It was fun.
Yeah, on the way home, I listened to their greatest hits, and I looked at myself in the rearview mirror, and I go, "That'll show them." No, just kidding. But and then also, I call myself up. I'm still upright because I had a little race. Gasper, you just saw my little race photo.
Oh, I totally forgot about this.
Talk about the race photo
real
quick.
100%.
Because I saw the race photo too. And I thought we would call you No Shoes Mike today because did you lose your feet, like your sneakers, while running? I've never seen anybody run.
I mean, I did. This maniac did a marathon with no shoes on.
I thought you got mugged because of where you live. I thought maybe somebody come up and stole your sneakers, and you're like, "I'm going to finish this race."
No, I didn't tell you guys because I didn't tell anybody. Like my family barely knew about it. My girlfriend barely. She's like, "You really did that?" But I ran the Twin Cities Marathon barefoot, and I didn't tell anybody because I thought I might fail at it. So, but I actually finished. I did all 26.2 miles barefoot. Got in under 4 hours, which was pretty good for being barefoot.
That's awesome.
And yeah, you're right. I almost lost my feet. They were burning at the end. I was like,
"Oh my God." Can I ask why?
And in true lifter.
Why would you do that?
Oh, well, because there's this new movement. There's like a new book out called "Do Hard Things." It's like a lot of them have to do with like cold weather therapy stuff, and they were like I know Adam Carolla, Joe Rogan, all these guys talk about cold weather therapy, and they have like. They jump into cold pools but they live in California and we can't have unheated pools in Minnesota because it would freeze up.
Yeah.
So I started running to the mailbox barefoot in January on the ice and snow, and I got kind of a rush out of it. It wasn't that far, but I got kind of a rush running when it was 20 below barefoot out there. So then I started training because they said. So it's just this big thing. Like they said, you can take up running at 6 a.m. I go, great. I already do that. And they go, unless you're a runner, because then you're used to it and it's not anything. So then I said, what can I do to do hard thing? And then COVID hit and all the races, all the marathons and stuff got canceled. So I started running barefoot because I was like, there's nothing to train for. So I started training to do that. And here we are. I didn't think I would make it, but I was meant to do it last year, and I just didn't get my training together, and I did it this year.
That's pretty impressive. I gotta say, like,
Congratulations.
if I was going to start to do hard things, I might begin with like Sudoku or something like that.
I mean, I might go with standing up like that. I'm running 26 miles barefoot in under 4 hours.
Yeah, that's
I don't know if I would drive that.
Well,
I don't drive a car barefoot. I'm not running.
Now that's funny. When I drive around, I look at the pavement. I'm just like an Indian staring at the pavement. I'm like, I could run this, and I go, no, that looks rough. I couldn't run that. Because when I was running, I was looking for the glossy parts in the road. They're smoother, and I was running on the yellow line, and I was singing "White Lines" by Grandmaster Flash because I was running on the white line so much because it was smoother. And as always, as I was training for this, and today we're doing Lifter Puller, I was singing a Lifter Puller song because it was the Twin Cities Marathon, and I was singing the song that got cut from this album we're talking about today. It's called "Math Is Money" because the big line in the song is, "You're ganging up on me, Twin Cities." That's the song I kept singing in my head as I was running the Twin Cities Marathon. Yeah.
I feel like this could be a Hold Steady song. Like, you could be a character like, Upright Mike likes to run marathons, but he does them with no shoes. Shoes on.
Shoes on.
Like, just right, like, just go. Like, I could feel it. I'm going to talk to Craig next time I see him.
I respect the Craig Finn karaoke there, by the way. That was very, very good.
Well, it did almost kill me. It did almost kill me.
See? Perfect. That's what we want. My goal might be to write a whole verse about you barefoot before the next episode.
Well, you had a good rhyme going there. He runs marathons with no shoes on. That rhymes, right?
Right. Well, if I had another line, I probably would write shoes. I will get there. I'll figure it out.
All right, man. Why don't we jump into this record?
Awesome.
Baby, ain't you heard about the nightclub called the Nice? They got the tries and the night fights on every other Wednesday night. I can see all the stains in your white tights when you stand in the black lights down at the Nice. We were born in these nightclubs, and you make those propositions with your sexy little shoulder shrugs.
All right, so 2000s. 22 years old. Fiestas and Fiascos, Lifter Puller's final album. So we're coming at this from three different perspectives. Like, I was aware of Lifter Puller when they were around. I listened to the album a little bit. I mean, listened to it more after Hold Steady became famous. And then we have Gasper, who you listened to it after you listened to Hold Steady, and Craig Finn's solo.
Right, yeah. This is basically me getting into where the Hold Steady kind of came from. That's how I looked at it. So I've definitely listened to the Hold Steady a lot more than I have of Lifter Puller. But I did enjoy the record.
And then we have Kevin Is Whenever, gives us a third perspective. Where was this your first listen through, Kevin?
It was. I didn't even know this record existed. And so when I got to listen to it, it was very interesting to hear the evolution of Craig from his earlier work to what would become the Hold Steady that I enjoy so much now. And it's a unique record in as much as some of the stuff you can hear where Hold Steady comes from, and there's other stuff I was just very much like, I don't know where this came from. I don't know who was on the most drugs in the room when they were recording. It was a very unique album, but it all comes together because of the unique storytelling and some very short songs. I also did notice there's a lot of mouth references, which to me is unique because I was wondering if Craig maybe has an oral fetish somewhere, because there is a lot of songs with talking about people's mouths and things you could do with your mouths and putting something in your mouth, and and it's not just one song. It's like 3 or 4 different songs make mouth references, which is a lot on one
Making
record.
money with your mouth in Man Park. Yeah, I think that's a good... I think this album was the first one where Lifter Puller... This was their last album for all rights purposes. I mean, they had a couple reissues and stuff. But this was the one where we kind of get the reoccurring story themes. I mean, we get the characters. We get the eye patch guy is in a bunch of songs. Of course, Club Dwight is kind of the protagonist, and he's in a bunch of songs. And then... I know they say Juanita, and I heard Katrina. Well, their names are rhyme, but I kind of heard those were the two female characters. Did you guys pick up on any other female characters reoccurring?
Well, you got Candy, right? We're in Candy's room in the second song, which I read up a little bit about this, and it was kind of interesting. Do you know where the reference there, Mike?
Yeah, it's a Bruce Springsteen song.
Right. So I didn't pick up on that right away. And what's cool about that is that's that little drum intro. It's the exact same drum intro from Candy's Room by the E Street Band. So that got me listening to that song, looking to find like clues as to how these two songs relate, and they don't. But besides the fact that it's the same name and the drum part, basically.
I will say this about Candy's Room too, which was interesting. It's one of the shorter songs on the album per se, but it has a very long droning keyboard outro for about 28 seconds at the end, which I noticed right away that there were some of the songs on the album that seemed to have intros, Craig doing what Craig does, and then this weird sort of extended outro before the next song would start. And Candy's Room was one of them specifically that stood out, even on a first listen.
Yeah, so this was the first album with Tad Kubler on. He played bass, and then goes on to play guitar for the Hold Steady. But Steve, who was I forgot his last name now, who's the guitarist, it's funny to watch him in concert because he has to throw the guitar aside and jump on the keyboards. He does the keyboards and the guitar, and so he's kind of got the guitar kind of strangling him while he's doing the keyboards. And what's his name again?
Barone, Barone.
Yeah, so Steve Barone, he's the keyboardist and the guitarist. And like I was reading a Pitchfork review of this album, and they said I kind of agree with it. They said he's got kind of an amateurish sound. It sounds kind of like a John Carpenter soundtrack. And I kind of like, I'm a big Franz fan, but I was really a fan of like the amateurs. It was more experimental sound. Like you were saying, Kevin, how it goes in from one song to the next. It sounded very experimental, maybe a little amateurish, but I kind of liked it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, it was a little new wavy to me, and that sound with some of that stuff, because back in the day, new wave used to do that with those weird changes and stuff, and it was, I don't know if there was a lot of inspiration taken from that, because like Candy's Room is an exact sort of take from a Springsteen song, but it doesn't feel like the classic rock sound that the Hold Steady, like the bar band sound that the Hold Steady became. This seemed a little more, like you said, experimental, almost in a fusion type of way. There's some really weird dissonant tones to it, which is one of the things I felt made it different than a Hold Steady. But there's definitely songs on there that like Nice I could see being a Hold Steady song, and the way it plays out and the arrangement reminded me more of a Hold Steady song than maybe some of the other songs on the album.
In listening to Lifter Puller, I kind of look at Fiestas and Fiascos as like, this is kind of the idea where Separation Sunday comes from, right? Like, it's the same idea of like, it's not quite a concept record, but all these songs are happening in the same universe. It's these reoccurring characters. They're not necessarily like tied together in a tight story, but there is a story going on. I think Separation Sunday does it a lot better than Fiestas and Fiascos does, but I also do enjoy picking up on that while I'm listening to the record and going like, oh, wait a second, we already heard about the eye patch guy, and like well, Dwight keeps popping up with like, how do these songs connect? Which I think makes it fun. That's what I first liked about the Hold Steady. It almost felt like a puzzle to solve.
Yeah, and I think we got the reoccurring themes, and I was just kind of, you are right, Kevin. One of this Lake Street is for Lovers is a minute 6. Cruised and Accused of Cruising is 1:37. Some of these songs are really short. Candy's Room's 1:54. Right.
And that was the interesting thing about Candy's Room, because it stood out right away. It was one of the things I noticed before I even knew the Springsteen tie-in was, for a minute and 54, there's a lot of what we might just call dead space in the song, and it's a short record to begin with. And so maybe that was just their way to kind of make it longer. But especially in Candy's Room, there's an extended outro. There's an extended outro in Space Humping, 1999. Like, for whatever reason, it was almost like, you sometimes go see a band live and they'll play a song and the song ends and then they just have like a backing track playing before they start the next song. And it almost felt like they were trying to do that on record, where it was like, all right, while we're switching instruments or getting ready, we're just going to put something here instead of having the song in. And then, the songs just kind of run right into each other, but they don't really play off what happens before them. It just kind of becomes its own song.
So what I took that keyboard part at the end of Candy's Room to mean is, and I don't know if I'm right here, but that happens right off the last line where he's talking about Nightclub Dwight, and he says he puts the pipe up to his mouth, then he casually breathes. And this is just my opinion, is that he's highlighting that last line in the song. He puts the pipe up to his mouth, then he casually breathes. This idea of him smoking whatever drugs he's doing, the crystal meth or the crack or whatever. I mean, you could smoke a few things, I suppose. And they do specifically mention powdered drugs a couple times on the record. So that's why my head is in that idea of crack or crystal meth. It does seem to be like a big deal that he's doing whatever he's doing from the pipe, right? Because I forget which song it is, but one girl pretty much gives the idea of like, this is why she doesn't really want anything to do with him, because he's using this pipe. So that was my take on it.
I mean, they do talk about an actual K-hole in a song title, which is its own drug in and of itself.
Katrina in the K-hole.
Katrina in the K-hole. Yeah, I remember I used to listen to this at work, and we were only allowed to have one earbud in, and I would listen to the last song, the flex and the buff result. And it's when they start, when the eye patch guy or whatever starts threatening that he's going to kill Dwight. And when I would listen with one earplug on, I didn't have the sound side, so I would hear the music go, and it would sound like Charlie Brown's Teacher. You could tell exactly what he was saying, but there was no words. You just hear the guitar. And I really thought that was a great effect. And the same thing with that last song when he gets to the part where he's threatening him, the flex and the buff result. They're at the nightclub and you can hear the nightclub music in the background, and then he slams the door. You can hear the door slam, and then it's muffled, and it sounds just like if you're listening to a nightclub behind the door. I really liked that effect. It kind of brought you like into the room with them.
Finally, the guy with the eye patch arrives. He was tripping wet with chip fist. He was half dead and dynamite, with a needle marked arms like the frontman in some grunge band. A big straw hat and a liquid orange suntan. He cooled himself off with a Japanese hand fan. Motion for silence, and then he began. He said, "You know this clown they call the Nightclub Dwight? He's got a place called the Nice Nice that he won rolling dice. Dwight likes the lights, he likes rum and the foam."
And that song is it's a great narrative. Those, I think it's 3:21 the length of that song. Like, that song by itself is almost like a full story, because from beginning to middle to end what's happening in that song. Like, and it's kind of ending with the destruction of the club, and they're going after him. He stiffed them, and it's time for the eye patch guy to collect. And it's sort of a full standalone story that if you had to take one song and kind of not be lost on the record, that's one of the ones you could listen to as a standalone and kind of go, I know what's going on.
Yeah, and like you were saying with the weird effects, and then at the end when he says the nightclub's going to be up in flames, it almost sounds like the speakers are like crackling, and they start fading away and crackling in flames almost, which
Made
I
a
thought that
joke,
was
he
nice.
leaned in close, and then he spoke. He said, "I want Nightclub Dwight dead in his grave. I want the nice up in blazes. I want Nightclub Dwight dead in his grave.
That's actually
I want
my
the
favorite song on the
nice up
record.
in blazes."
It's an interesting thing I was going to ask you, Mike, because I don't know it, because again, this was my first, but like a song like Lake Street is for Lovers, which is probably my least favorite song on the record for all intents and purposes. Not that there's a lot there, but there's also a second voice on that song that's just kind
rapping.
You like rapping in the background. Is that somebody of note? Was that just a friend? Is that another guy in the band? I was very curious about
Fred
that.
Armisen's band. That's the lead singer from Fred Armisen's band. What was his name? What was their name again? Yeah, Trenchmouth. So that was the lead singer to Trenchmouth that did that. And they also had a song called Lifter Puller, which was a very reggae, where they just kept saying Lifter Puller, were basically the only lyrics. They kept saying it over and over again.
It is interesting that on this record there is a Lifter Puller song title in their own album, which I always find interesting when bands do that. Like, there's only a handful of bands that have successfully put themselves in a song, and like this was Lifter Puller verse the end of the evening.
It's not quite a theme song though, right? The that song. It's
I have a story about that song, Lifter Puller versus the end of the evening. We know First Avenue, which is, that's where me and Gasper met. That's when this whole venture, this whole podcast started. That's for those of you that don't know, that's the bar in or the nightclub in Minneapolis where, with all the stars painted on it, it's got the prints. It's where Purple Rain, all the indoor scenes in Purple Rain were filmed there. And it closed in 2000. It went bankrupt in 2004. And it was just devastating. And the mayor, R.T. Ryback, or whoever the mayor was, he had grown up going to First Avenue like everybody else. And he declared it a historical, what do you call that? You save it
Landmark.
for historical building landmark. Yes, historical landmark. And so they saved it, and now now they own every nightclub in town. They're doing excellent now, because I think the daughter bought it, and I think she lives in New York, and she's running it out of New York, which is really weird, but it's doing great. But anyways, they closed, and we didn't know all that. We just knew they were closing, and the employees, they found out it was closing, and supposedly the last song they ever played was Lifter Puller versus the end of the evening. I don't know if that's true or not, but I heard it on a podcast, and podcasts don't lie. So
that's true.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And before we get off Lake Street is for Lovers, just a little fun fact that I had found. So according to, or at least this poster says, according to Craig Finn, so he's given us a little bit of background about Lake Street. He says Lake Street runs all through Minneapolis, from the really nice parts to the really lousy parts. And then he goes on to say that, so Patrick Costello from Dillinger 4 was in the studio when they recorded the song, and he came up with the title. He basically says you should call it Lake Street is for Lovers, as a tongue-in-cheek reference to the Virginia is for Lovers tourism campaign. So, little fun fact there.
I also do, and it's just because I grew up as a 80s rap guy for a couple of years. I do love in Cruised and Accused of Cruising, where they make the LL Cool J reference for Juanita, says I'm LL Cool J.
Yeah.
And the way he plays with the lyric, where she said, hey, my name's Juanita, but the guys, they call me LL Cool J because I've been here for years and you can't call it a comeback. Like, I thought that was a very, something that Craig has come to do a lot in the Hold Steady, but hearing it that far back, that wordplay was really fun, because some of those old LL Cool J records are some of my favorites.
And this isn't, I think it's To Live and Die in LBI, which is on a different album. That's where he makes the Two Live Crew reference. So yeah, he talks about the Two Live Crew.
Right.
And that's the song that's the most Hold Steady-ish. I think you could take out To Live and Die in LBI. I think you could throw it right on Almost Killed Me, and you wouldn't even notice a difference, except they do say Lifter. That's also the song where they call themselves out, Lifter Puller, where she said she could use some Diet Cola or at least a little Lifter Puller. So yeah.
And also in that song, besides, they also talk about getting drunk on rum punch and being at the arcade, and she looked a little played. I think lyrically that might be my favorite song on the record, just because it felt most like Craig being in that zone that we've kind of come to know him for, in the way he can craft a story with these really, painted visuals that when you listen to it, you're like, I feel like I know this person. I feel like I know who this Juanita is. I think we all kind of listen to some of these songs, whether it's Hold Steady, Lift or Pull or whatever. You can pick out a person in your life that's like the person he's talking about, which makes it,
right.
It makes the song sit better than some other bands that are just singing about random topics.
She had a lion-like mane, she had the jaws like a skill crane, and went with rum punch and hanging off the video games. At some seaside arcade, you know she looked pretty great. And we were bored on the boardwalk, so we just started talking. And there's laws against loitering, so we all started walking. We ended up back in my place. We mixed the Ripple and the champagne, yeah, and then things got kind of strange.
Yeah, and like you both said, I think this is the best way to look at Lifter Puller to see where the Hold Steady came from, kind of their origin story. And when I see these Lifter Puller songs, or when I listen to them, I kind of like Craig's got the scene there. We got the underground scene, with all these notorious characters, and he's got all this energy. It seems like he doesn't know where to place it yet, and sometimes the storylines get lost, and they're not as concise as they are later in the Hold Steady when he's in his 30s and maybe a better writer at that point.
I mean, you could even see some references that get used later on, like, so lie down on Lansdowne. We hear that again, right? That's she lies down on Lansdowne and loses her left shoe for Boston, right? That's a lyric in the song.
A lot of losing Boston. Left shoes,
right? But I mean, it's the title of the song here. And there was a couple of other spots where I picked up on that, where it's like you could see he was toying with a phrase, and we see the phrase again in another Hold Steady song.
Yeah. Doesn't in one of these songs he says, "People, I'm trying to get people to call me." Doesn't he say that in one of these songs? Or so people call me. So he's already toying with the nicknames. He's like, "People call me something." In one of these songs, I can't remember, but
I did want to ask you about, while we were talking about Lie Down on Lansdowne. So it comes up here. He says, he's talking about the bars. He says, mostly it's 3-2 bars and scars and tar. That 3-2 reference comes up a couple of other times. There's
It's like see-through. I've been trying to meet you, dying to reach you. It's too late for liquor, but we could get some 3-2. We could always get some 3-2. We could always get some 3-2. 3, 2, 1. Are you still having fun? 1, 2,
I was going to ask you about that. You guys get that reference?
I don't, and I assumed it was a Minneapolis thing, which is why I'm deferring to you. What does that mean?
Well, you know how every state has its crazy liquor laws. Like I think in Pennsylvania, you have to buy beer across the street from liquor. I don't know. Every state is so weird. In Minnesota, our weird one is gas stations aren't allowed to sell full strength beer, so they have to sell. It's 3.2% alcohol, so it's called 3.2 beer. And so it's like it's kind of towards the end of the evening when the liquor stores are closed, you run to the gas station, and that means you're getting desperate. I think that's why he's saying we can always get some 3.2 over and over again. I think kind of the desperation, kind of the Walmart of beers kind of situation. Yeah. So that's why it kind of worked for me. And I was going to ask you guys if you knew what that meant, because I didn't think
that would went over my head.
No, and it's funny in certain. I just know from travels at work, there's certain, like Salt Lake City, because of the town and the elevation, their beer is lower alcohol by volume because the lack of oxygen gets you drunk quicker. So they sell actually lower alcohol beer in certain cities because of that reason. And I just know from being in Utah, that was one of the places I remember.
And Utah probably closes down at like 8 p.m. They're probably or something. I think they have a really early shutdown.
They do. So. I think that's more religious based than the actual thing. I think that's the community laws.
I wonder if they sell lower alcohol beer in Denver. That'd be interesting because the elevation is pretty high there, right? But like they're also known for being a party town, so I don't know.
They might have bucked the system.
Yes.
Another thing that while we're talking about this Lifter Puller record, and it's something that as a Hold Steady fan we've all come to know, but it was just fun to see it even back in 2000 before they had done it, is the product placement that Craig likes to use in his songs. If you ever remember like the original Wayne's World movie when they were trying to sell the movie and they're like, here's the pizza box and here's this, and like here and like take a song like Nice Nice where he's singing about Bartles and James and Heffernafer and Pantene and Visine, like all these name brands that he's name dropping. You would almost think like people were paying him to like put it in a song, but yet here it's a song about like an after hour club and people being drunk. So it's like, it's really kind of funny to see some of those references. But of course, then as a listener, you can relate because you know Bartles and James and you know
Right.
Visine and you know Pantene. And it's, it always makes me think like he could be the best jingle writer in the world if he ever wanted to, because he's already talking about most of these brands anyway.
Yeah, it's and then in his new solo career, like we talked about this, he always, and you guys don't know this in New York, he always talks about Super America or SA. And that's a big gas station change, but then they recently got changed over to Speedway is their name now, and he even references that in his new song.
Right.
What was that new song he has, this solo song?
Oh,
Where it start and the song has a time lapse and it starts out there walking to Super America for cigarettes.
Shamrock and Sabrina.
Shamrock and Sabrina, yeah, and then at the end they walk to Speedway for cigarettes. So he even changed over time. He changed the brand. Yeah,
He actually uses it as like a
timestamp.
yeah, like a passage of time. It's like he used as a device. Yeah, interesting. And while you're talking about product naming, we get a lifter puller drink in Touch My Stuff, much like we get our Hold Steady drinks throughout the songs as the Grey Goose and the Gatorade, which does not sound tasty.
I don't know. Vodka Gatorade? I might have to try that one time when I'm out. Electrolytes and...
All right. Is there any other specific songs you want to get into?
Yeah, I was going to say one song we didn't talk about, which was interesting because it also stood out to me, was Touch My Stuff. If I'm right, that's the one. This almost feels like it could be like a Blink-182. Like it's pretty fast out of the gate.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
more upbeat than some of the other stuff on the album. And the first line, right, was like the West Side Story reference. So with the Jets and the Sharks.
I guess it starts with the Sharks. I guess it gets to the Jets. I guess these bloods, they can't stop bleeding. The fighting started.
I remember that song too also standing out to me as one of the ones where I was like, oh, this is a very interesting tune. And I think it also just stood out because it's the most aggressive and sort of, upbeat, faster pace songs on the record, probably over everything else that's going on.
This one strikes me as the most hold steady of the songs that are on this record, which I know is weird to say. Like I've had so many people over the years at shows tell me like, yeah, this is my favorite hold steady song because it could have been a lifter puller song. So it's usually taken the other way, but because we're coming late to the game.
Okay, so I'm going to ask, which Hold Steady song do you think sounds the most lifter pullerish?
Cool.
To me, it's the early stuff. Like I would think like Freddie Knuckles works the best, but
That's really good.
I'm
one.
trying to think of, somebody told me at a Massive Night show, I believe it was Denver Haircut, I think is what he said that he felt was, which I don't really hear.
Yeah, Denver Haircut kind of has, it does sound a little like lifter puller because I kind of get lost. I kind of see what the storyline's about, but it kind of meanders and gets lost a few times on me. But no, I was going to say for my answer is Positive Jam because it has. That's kind of what I like about Lifter Puller, and I liked about that song Positive Jam. It's kind of like, and I thought their last album, Open Door Policy, was kind of Craig's kind of doing his beat poetry, and then they answer, they kind of call back with the music, and then he hits with the lyric, and then the guitar or the drum or whatever comes back at him, kind of answers them, and I kind of get that, and
Right.
and Positive Jam, and
I also kind of always thought that like the songs that we get on the re-release of the records, so like Milk Crate Mosh is a good example. Like I think the reason it doesn't make the record is because they might have looked at it as like this is too much of a lifter puller song and not as much a hold steady song. Because that one, lifter puller is a little bit to me more stripped down than the hold steady, a little more lo-fi. I know Kevin's made a few music references. I hear like a lot of Dinosaur Jr. in Lifter Puller. I don't know if that's just in my head, but that's how I hear
Same
it.
time frame, right? Wouldn't that be the same time frame? Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting too, going back to Touch My Stuff, because that's a song where you're talking about the Grey Goose and the Gatorade. But, you have Candy's Room, which is clearly a Springsteen song. But and then in Touch My Stuff, they talk about going from We Did the Goat's Head Soup into the Tattoo You. That's a Rolling Stones reference, because those are
Right.
two Rolling Stones albums. So, it's interesting how, and I'm going to imagine that the Rolling Stones somewhere were an influence, or it's just a good part of the story. But the way they sort of, and I feel like Craig does it better than anybody, the way you sort of talk about some of these things, and going back to what I was saying before, it instantly pulls you into this world, because most people know Tattoo You. That was like the big resurgent Rolling Stone record with Start Me Up on it, and in the same song, he's talking about the Grey Goose and Gatorade, Black and Tans, the Jets and the Sharks and the Bloods, which is all the West Side Story references, and it's he kind of takes these pop culture notions that most people will know, but puts it into a song so that the character and the world that he's creating, which, as we talked about earlier, is sort of a running theme through every song on this album, just becomes more for the listener to go, oh, I can relate to this, even if I'm not from,
Yeah, I just pulled the lyric
the
from
area where the
Touch My
club is.
Stuff, and it kind of everything we just touched about, because it's even got the commercial reference. But he says the liberty, the ecstasy, the love, the drugs, the unity, and the bus, they look just like the Hey Kool-Aid commercial. So, I mean, he's got everything kind of in there. Yeah.
Right. And like that Rolling Stone reference, like it's almost like for Craig, the Stones are like a touchstone to a period of music, basically, right? Because we see that reference again, not in the same way, but in Adderall, right? Like, if she's, if she asks, tell her that we opened for the Stones, it's her favorite band except for the Ramones. Like, he could have picked any band there except for it rhymes very well with the Ramones, but but like these are like we do see these references again, just used differently. And I know it, like, so to your point about like putting the listener exactly where they need to be to understand these characters in probably the fewest words needed. Like, I think Kevin and I were talking about this last night. Um, in the very first song, in Lonely in a Limousine, he's got that line, and all these Chesterfield chicks, they hate the Camel Lights girls. And like that, to me, it's so perfect. Like, it's in one sentence, he tells you exactly what's going on. Like, you got these two groups of girls that they're not getting along, and they're not getting along because of they're in this clique and they're in that clique, and like exactly who they are by what they're smoking, right? Like the Chesterfield chicks are clearly like they're the ones that are a little more upscale, or at least see themselves that way. The Camel Lights girls are the type of girls you can hang out in a bar and watch a football game with and might get into a fight with you, like that. And he's so good at that with just a couple of words. That shows through in both Lifter Puller and the Hold Steady.
We should almost do a contest for our listeners where it's like whoever can go in and count the pop culture reference numbers and get them right. Like, we'll have to do it on our own. I didn't do it in advance, but like, because even in like Space Hump in 1999, he's talking about Bombay Gin. There's Grey Goose. Like, alcohol is a very big part of this band, as we all know, and there's a lot of things. I was going to ask you, Mike, because I didn't know, like, is Channel 3 a station in Minnesota? Because, like, in New York, we don't have a Channel 3. And in Space Humping, they talk about Channel 3 and being on the news there. And I wasn't sure if that's a channel by you.
I thought it was a channel in New York.
No,
it's a dead channel. And, when we were kids, that used to be the channel you'd put on when you want to play your Atari or whatever.
Same here.
Same here. That's what it was. That's why it's interesting. We had, that's the same thing we had in, but they talk about it.
Yeah, so you're making fun, like it's a dead channel. That's because you can kind of read that into it. It's like Channel 3. I don't know. Almost like he was talking about a dead channel.
Interesting. Maybe that's what they were going for in that one. But I noticed that and I was like, I wonder if that's an actual station in Minnesota.
See, and now from that song, and also with like name dropping a product, like I like to make bootleg T-shirts, and I take like I'll usually take like a Hold Steady lyric and like build a theme around it. And if I were to do that for Lifter Puller, "Bring on the bed spins, bring on the mini thins" is probably my favorite line from this song.
Right.
There's a lot of great. There's so many great lines.
She said I felt like a bitch. Woke up with your friend in the Indian fringes. Bring on the bed spins, bring on the mini thins. Bring on the bed spins, bring on the mini thins. She was bumped on the bass in the Bombay chin.
And that's just the funny thing, like going back to what we said a few times, but just the pop cult Chesterfields and the Camel Lights and it's just these references because and like when you hear it right away, the difference between the person who smokes a Chesterfield versus a Camel Light. Like I've seen people, we've all seen people, and you can right away get a visual of who that person is that's smoking those different type of cigarettes. And that's why, and that's right out of the box and Lonely in a Limousine, and it really sets a great sort of picture for the journey you're about to go on with these characters that they're creating through all of Fiestas and Fiascos.
Going back to Candy's room, when he's talking about the nice, he says, "Have you heard about the nice? They got the dry ice and the knife fights on every other Wednesday night. Why wouldn't it be every Wednesday night? Why would it be every Wednesday night?" And he said, "I can see the stains in your white tights," so that right away they have the fluorescent lighting there, or the black lights, I should say.
So, just to do like more of a general thing, like Mike, like what was going on in Minnesota when this was happening, when Lifter Puller specifically was happening, and like this time frame?
So the late 90s, yeah, it was kind of when this was going on. It was kind of like we talked about last episode with Lauren. It was Dillinger 4 and I guess Trenchmouth, which I wasn't really familiar with them, but Fred Armisen's band and all those kind of bands were going on in the Twin Cities. They were kind of all hanging around the Triple Rock, which just recently, I saw Craig Finn do a show there the last week it was open. That has closed, the Triple Rock. That was the big Lifter Puller bar. So, and I got a selfie with him at that bar. Just that was the only time I ever got a selfie with him. So that was that week that it closed. So it was that kind of scene. I remember it was before the internet was really cooking. So it was, you'd look at the back of the city pages to see what bars were playing what bands, and I would just see Lifter Puller like I remember them, and I can't remember anybody else. You just see them so often, like playing somewhere. So, yeah.
Were they ever on the radio locally, Lifter Puller? Was it like a band that made whatever the local Minnesota station?
No, they were on Jenny Jones. Can you believe that? Because they were friends with some producer on Jenny Jones, and the Jenny Jones show, and you can see that on YouTube. It's a really grainy video, really bad sound quality, but they played the Bears on Jenny. The Bears, the song, the Bears. Right. They played that on Jenny Jones. I don't know why they played that song. That's got kind of a gay reference to it. But yeah.
For all our listeners, there's no correlation between Jenny Jones being canceled and Lifter Puller being booked on the show. Those were separate incidents.
Yeah. And it's like what Craig said. He goes, the Hold Steady's a better bar than Lifter Puller, but he goes, if you're going to make a movie, he goes, the Lifter Puller would be the better movie of the two.
And so this record came out in 2000, and the first Hold Steady record was 2004, right? Is that correct? So,
yep.
I mean, as sort of the least knowledgeable, what was going on? Were they just taking a break from music? Was there something in between this and that sort of maybe we should dive into next time?
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to, he kind of talks about it in Hold Steady songs. He moved to New York in that time period, and then he got bored, so he started a band. Man, like, what song is that? He talks about it a little bit in his song.
So Lifter Puller breaks up after this record, I assume, because they don't hit the level of popularity. I would say, like, success. They have a couple of records. They had their run in Minneapolis, and for whatever reason, they break up. He moves to New York and gets a job. At least this is how I remember him telling the story. At a Hold Steady show, and then eventually starts to Hold Steady when Tad comes to New York, right? Because Tad is the only original member who was in both bands. So that's you get a 4-year break because it was basically a career change at that point, and then he comes back to.
Yeah, and I don't think him and Tad knew it was going to be a band at that. Like, and then going back to Positive Jam, that how they kind of started, it was just Tad was just kind of jamming, and then Craig would just kind of riff, and that's kind of what you get on Positive Jam. And then, see, I always want to ask. I don't even think. Do you think the band was named the Hold Steady before Positive Jam came out? Because it's like where he starts screaming "Hold Steady" at the end. I think the band was named after that
I
song
agree
came
with
out,
you.
or after they worked
I
on
agree
that
with
song.
you. I think even when you look up like where does the name come from, it's accredited as being a reference in their song. So I think they do take the name from the reference in the song. But that would be an excellent question for Craig at some point to be like, why the Hold Steady?
Mm-hmm.
And according to online, it looks like they sort of state that the Hold Steady formed in 2003 and the first record was 2004. So it really wasn't a long break though between Lifter
it's
Fuller
about a 3-year break.
and
it's
which is there's bands now in music that take 3 years between albums and they're not switching format. So when you think about it, and based on what Mike was just saying, the record came out, he moves, relocates, and then creates a new band all in a time span of 3 years. That's not really a long amount of time when you think about it. So I don't think he ever lost a musical bug. Maybe it was just a change of scenery. Well, we know now that the change of scenery did them good because it brought the band. That's the reason we're all sitting here talking about this
and then
on this podcast.
The Hold Steady. Oh, I mean, they were releasing every 11 months. They would have a new. I mean, like I said, I got into Separation Sunday, and then Boys and Girls in America came out before I could even get acquainted with the songs on Separation. I mean, they were just cranking them out. I mean, right at the beginning there.
I'm just trying to think, like, just from a different perspective, what was going on for us when Mike was listening to Lifter Puller, because that would have been late 90s to early 2000s. That's pretty much, well, like we said,
that was a good period for music. Everything was going on.
Yeah, that was.
So from my end, it was Dinosaur Jr. It was a lot of weird, like we were calling it modern rock at the time, right? Like,
it was Rage Against the Machine. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the Woodstock '99 documentary, but it was Korn.
We were at Woodstock '99.
No, we were at 94. We were at 94.
That's right. We were at 94.
We learned our lesson after 94.
Yeah, and the documentary doesn't talk about 94. I kind of remember 94 a lot more than
94 was a very interesting. Yeah. We were at that one, and we left Sunday morning early after watching Mike Dirnt from Green Day get his teeth knocked out on stage by security because he was covered in mud from the fans heaving mud at him that they thought he was a fan that jumped on stage and tackled him, knocked his teeth out. And at that point, we're like, I think it's time for us to go. And that we went, we packed up our stuff, and we got out of there. It's the last band we saw that day. That is by far
the craziest.
And we were home in time to watch the Chili Peppers on TV that night, because I think the Chili Peppers closed that night. And we were home in time to watch it on pay-per-view.
Wow, they played 99 too, because Flea was naked in 99.
And they played Fire as everything started burning in 99, and they get a lot of heat for not sort of quelling the crowd that they played into what was going on and made it worse.
Now that was, so the first Woodstock revival concert was like the weirdest concert we've ever been to. Like, if I remember it correctly, by the second day, because the setup was basically like, it was a 3-day festival. I forget how much we paid. It was like $300 or something like that to be there for the whole thing. And like, you get there and you park your car in this field, and then they drive you to the other field where the concert's happening, and it's like miles away. You cannot walk from where you're seeing the concert to where your car is. And by the second day, like, security quit. Like, they had all these guys in their yellow t-shirts, and they just took them off and became part of the crowd. So it was a free for all, like, by day 2. And a lot of crazy stuff happened, but the mud stuff that he's referencing is there was the famous scene from the Woodstock movie where they're playing in the mud, and that became a thing. Like, in the movie, they're playing in the mud because it rained, and it rained the field out, and they were all muddy. At this show, they flooded the field with the water fountains and made what they dubbed the Mud People at this show, and that was kind of the beginning of the end for that show. It kind of got really crazy. But do you remember, Kev, when we were getting home, when we decided it was time to flee this concert? And this is where I'm going with the story, because it kind of feels like a Hold Steady story in a way. We're literally like leaving this concert because we were like, this is going to get dangerous. Like, someone's going to get hurt. And we paid an off-duty cop to drive us back to the to where the cars were. Yeah, he had like this minivan covered in like plastic, so like we wouldn't get his seats all screwed up. And I think he charged us $100 to go back to the cars, and he was like, you guys are getting us at a good time because they told us we could charge whatever we want, and the people who go later tonight are going to pay $100 each. I was like, wow, this is.
Yeah, we paid $100 for the whole car, and there was 6 of us. I mean, my then girlfriend at the time, my brother had come, there was like 5 or 6 of us at the time, and it was a unique.
Yeah, we could do a whole podcast on that show.
We could do a whole podcast on Woodstock 94.
That was definitely the weirdest experience ever.
That was something.
Yeah. Wow. And that's what the 99 just made like a brief 1-sentence reference to 94. And I was like, there was a lot happened in 94. And
94 was a real tough show. And it's going back to what we were talking about, though, like when you look at the music of 2000, like, you had the new metal stuff with Korn and Limp Bizkit and that thing. You had pop where NSYNC was selling 1 million copies a year that same year. And like all of the, like, those 2000s, and like, that was some of the best time for music because everything was playing together. Outkast was doing Stankonia. Like, there was some really great Radiohead did Kid A. Like, 2000 was some great music, and it was all able to kind of be enjoyed. Like, now it's way more segregated and way more, that stuff doesn't cross over like it used to.
But notice the Hold Steady came out with all the Hold Steady came out with the band. There's the Strokes, the Shins, the White Stripes, the Killers,
the Hives. There was a lot, there was a lot of the bands.
That was also a weird time for music too, because if you think about it, like, also at that same time, like, Green Jelly was very popular, right? Like, remember them?
The Three Little Pigs band.
Don't you sit right back, and I may tell you a tale of 3 little pigs and a big bad wolf.
The Three Little Pigs band, right? And like, there's a few others that like were like Faith No More was even a little silly at that point, right? You had that was like the beginning of the rap rock thing,
and because it was sort of the end of the grunge phase, like that whole. I mean, grunge, of course, Pearl Jam and those bands were still famous, but like the impact was sort of gone by '99. Like Nirvana was already like moving on, and the. Bands like Alice in Chains, Stone Temple Pilots was on their 4th album, which, was the beginning of the end of the popularity for them. Yeah, so 2000 was weird. And, like, pop was really becoming the big mainstream where Britney's and NSYNC's and Christina Aguilera were becoming, household names. And the Spice Girls were, the 2000s were really a weird time. Creed was ending. And it was a... there's a lot that went on in that music space at that time.
I remember Rolling Stone they were getting desperate, like what's going to replace, because when grunge left, I mean, grunge was everything. And when it came on so strong, and then when it left, there was that gaping hole. They said Prodigy was going to fill that void.
Yep.
It was remember Prodigy?
Yeah, like the whole electronica thing. And it's interesting because, I wish I would have found the Hold Steady in early 2000s, because I look back on early 2000s as Craig, or at least the narrator looks back on the 80s, where the 2000s almost killed me, and I do not recall them so fondly. Because like what Kevin's talking about, that music, he's right about the NSYNC and the Britneys, and that's what the radio stations were playing. That's what was getting pushed, and I hate that music, man. So that's my new wave. That's the music that almost killed me.
Yeah, I mean, even when you think about bands like Pantera and Metallica, that was a lot of dead years, and for those bands, I mean, Pantera's main records were already done. Metallica was in the sort of load reload phase where many people were like, what's going on here with these albums? And
that's where I got off the Metallica bus.
So it's an interesting year. And then here's this record that we've been talking about for the last 45 minutes that sort of, even in my world, I only listened to the other day, but it was so under the radar, but really is sort of the birthplace for what's become a band that we all just love. And it's interesting to see that evolution, because I think we could all say if there was no Lift or Puller, there'd be no Hold Steady. I mean, it's clear that experience that they put on those first records are what brought them to the records that we all kind of love and go out multiple times a year to go see.
That's probably
and I think
a good place to wrap it up, I think.
Yeah,
it's well said.
It's what I do as a producer.
Crank up your amps, man.
This was a lot of fun. It gave us, a good conversation, I think, for the three of us and hopefully for the listener. I think we should do this across the board. We should do it for the Hold Steady and Craig solo. And since we're a show that likes to roll dice, either because we're gamblers or because we just don't have a better way to pick things, why don't you roll dice, Gasper, and we'll see. So if it's an odd number, we'll make it a Craig Finn solo, and if it's an even number, we'll make it a Hold Steady album.
All right, let me get my dice out here.
We could call this segment the Dice segment.
There you go.
There you go, the Dice. I like it.
Have you heard about the Dice? All right, let's see. We're gonna roll the die. All right, so I'm gonna roll my die, and we said even's gonna be the Hold Steady, and odd is gonna be Craig Finn, right? Okay, so I rolled a 3. So we are going with...
So it is odd.
All right.
Craig Finn solo.
All right, so I'll take out the D6 again, We're going to take out the D6 again so we can pick the Craig Finn record, and it's going to be record number 2. Mike, what record is record number 2?
Ooh, so that would be the first album of his trilogy, and that would be Faith in the Future?
All right.
That is correct.
Nice. The next time we do this, we will all study up on Faith in the Future, and we will have another deep conversation.
Awesome. And then after that, I think we'll be talking about Massive Nights.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep. I still got to book my flights.
Our next episode will be Faith in the Future, and then the one after that, I think we'll all be out seeing some Massive Nights. So it'll be fun to circle back to some of the live stuff that we've done earlier.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to this especially because I mean we did not get the New York Craig Finn show. Unfortunately, it got canceled. I guess I don't know if they ever released who got COVID in the band. I don't think Craig got sick, but one of the band members got sick right before the Boston show, and I kind of saw it coming because they put out the announcement due to unforeseen circumstances, the Boston show is canceled. And me and Kevin were talking that night, and I'm like, they're canceling the whole leg. And he's like, you don't know. Maybe. I'm like, no, it's going to happen. And sure enough, like 2 days later, they canceled the whole East Coast leg. So no solo Craig Finn stuff for
bummer.
us. Yeah. But he did play Seth Meyers' show.
Seth Meyers.
Did you guys catch that? I thought it was a great performance. We got Amarillo Kid. Did you get a chance to see it, Mike?
Yes, he's played Seth Meyers. I know he played God in Chicago, and he's done the Hold Steady's been on it at least twice. So I know he's been on Seth Meyers, a good friend of his. He's been on there quite a bit.
Right. They actually, me and Mike were talking about this. So I caught it actually on YouTube the next day. And when you look up the performance, the next video that comes up in the YouTube rotation is them playing a couple of years back. They played a song called "Meet Me in the Lobby." And Mike, why don't you tell the story behind that? The "Meet Me in the Lobby" song.
Oh, that was Seth Meyers' son was born in the when they were waiting for the ambulance. I guess he was born in the lobby of the apartment they live. I think it was. And then then Craig, they wrote the song "Meet Me in the Lobby."
Yeah, and it's like a full-on song. It's a good song. He mentioned something about like he was doing like a show where he was doing a special about it or something like that. So this was supposed to be the theme song. But if you haven't listened to the song yet, it's actually one that like I'd like them to play at a show. It's a full-on Hold Steady song about Seth Meyers' son being born in the lobby, but not really like in the way that they kind of like knowing the story behind it, you know what it's about. But if you did not know the story, you'd be like,
yeah, Craig does his vagueness where it's like
it could be about anything.
Yeah, where he's like, I'm ready to come out now. So I opened my eyes and everybody was there or something. Yeah, so you can't really tell what it's about. Yeah.
No, I haven't heard the song. Does he do his product placement where there's Pampers and formula in it? Because I would, if I had to bet out of the box, that would have been a good go-to.
I don't think he does, but I'll have to go back and look at the lyrics.
I'll have to go listen.
Inconvenience, man. I get a little impatient. I started out with the best laid plans, came in on a cloud of commotion. Touching your child and waiting around. Sick of this spinning these wheels. I'm kind of in a hurry, so maybe in the lobby. Here in New York City, everybody's always stupid busy. Find a time when we're all free. Unscheduled appearances and the thrill of surprise. There was quite a crowd when I opened my eyes. All right, man. So we're going to wrap it up there. I want to remind everybody, please check us out on social media. You could find us under the Hood Rat Recap at Facebook. You could also find us on Twitter at Hood Rat Recap, and you could send us an email at thehoodratrecap@gmail.com. We're also on Discord, the Hood Rat Recap, so we'd love to hear from you. And I'm Gasper, that's Kevin, that's Mike, and all of us guys, and all of you guys, we are all the Hood Rat Recap.